Cardano update.
Let's get into it.
So today, guys, we're going to be taking another cheeky look at Cardano and specifically the price action of ADA. We'll be taking a look at the Fear and Greed Index, the advice dashboard, the Bitcoin dominance, the stock to flow model, and of course, that Cardano ADA chart to see exactly what has been going on in the last 24 hours when it comes to the price action of ADA. If you find this video useful and informative, do go ahead and hit that like button for us. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with all those new cryptocurrencies, hidden gems, technical analysis, and news, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing to the channel, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free, you'll stay well informed, so why not? And Chris, is there anything else that you would like to add before we jump on down to the desktop and start taking a look at absolutely everything Cardano?
So just I guess a pool update. Don't forget you can delegate your ADA for a passive income to the ticker 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘. You can do this with most ADA wallets. We have 1,158 delegators delegating 13.9 million ADA. So why not jump in the pool and earn a nice juicy passive income of about 5.5%.
Fantastic. Right, let's jump on down to the desktop, guys, and start talking about everything Cardano.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, here we have the Fear and Greed Index. Obviously, this is a generalized Fear and Greed Index for the entire crypto space. Here we can see that today's Fear and Greed Index rating is currently set at 14, so slightly higher than yesterday, which was 13. But basically, these do indicate to us that there's extreme fear in the market. Last month it's saying that it was greedy. I'm not sure I can totally agree with that, but it was definitely more greedy than it is today. Last week saying extreme fear. So in these particular moments here when there's extreme fear, what is a usual kind of scenario here is you can kind of see how this has been playing out recently. This is day by day, and you can see where this really started to get dropped down with that extreme fear. And extreme fear can be a sign that investors are too worried. That could be a buying opportunity. And when investors are getting too greedy, it means that the market is due for a correction. Okay, so when we understand what's been going on, generally speaking, for the crypto space, we can obviously jump into the advice dashboard here and take a look at Cardano specifically. So here for Cardano, it actually has an overall rating of C1, and this is indicating to us, across all of the different metrics, the artificial intelligence has picked out that this is actually a C1 rated cryptocurrency for today. And we scroll down here, we can go just past that trading view there. We can obviously see the price action of ADA. We'll get into that in a moment. But if we scroll down, we can find the Fear and Greed Index for Cardano. Normally under the last kind of few weeks, it's actually been performing quite well. But unfortunately now it has actually slipped down to a D rating for the Fear and Greed Index on the Cardano ADA side. Now, obviously we can see how it was performing. We've had these kind of blips down here where it has, of course, been extremely fearful, and right now it's back into that zone. So again, Cardano holders are also succumbing to the fear a bit in this space. So it's always good to understand what's going on there. But for me personally, I always have that longer term vision when it comes to Cardano, and I'm not overly concerned over these kind of small corrections that you see happening here there during the bull run. Ultimately, there's a longer term picture that you have to kind of paying attention to, and we'll get into our charts and we'll have a look at what some of those longer term pictures look like. But for me, yeah, it's just important to remember not only what's happening in the space, but also what is happening with Cardano's specifically from that Fear and Greed Index. Now, obviously, we can shoot down here. We can also see what's also been affected by this is the Sharpe ratio. We can see how the Sharpe ratio has also decreased here. So the risk to rewards has also been affected by the recent kind of trends. And again, you can see these across a couple of other things as well. So it's always worth just making sure that you can see the profitability, and it's again, that's the highest it can be with an A1 rating. So the profitability there in 2021 has obviously been fantastic. Of course, this is starting to decline a tad here. So I do think though this is likely to get a reversal in the next few weeks or so, and we should start getting back on track. With that being said, it's also the AMI HUD ratio here, which is a grade D. So it's looking like there's some few liquidity issues now when it comes to Cardano as well. So again, when we couple all of these technical indicators together, it gives us an overall C1 rating here for Cardano. And again, I can shoot on up here and we can take a look at all of these other cryptocurrencies that are on 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗦's dashboard. And obviously we can just see and compare them against each other. Now, when it comes to everything that we've been talking about today, we can just go to crypto here. For example, we can see Cardano yesterday was actually rated as a B2, and today it's actually dropped down to a C1. And again, it's important to understand what's been happening and where things are currently going. And this is basically down to, I believe, the fear and greed index element and the liquidity element for Cardano as to why this has been slipping down the rankings here in the 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗦 dashboard. Now, with all that said, let's jump over to this. This is obviously Bitcoin's dominance. We talk about this quite a bit. And here we can obviously see that we came down to that 39 area. We moved the Bitcoin dominance up a little bit, and it has had a bit of a retracement back down. And again, this is going to be telling those institutions that there is basically just a tad too much retail money here, and they could still shake you out. And I feel this is probably one of those moments that really helped instigate putting all those shorts in place on Bitcoin, dragging that price down. Obviously, these are accumulating. These people are also accumulating Bitcoin at those lower values, but obviously the entire market tends to follow Bitcoin until you have that moment of decoupling. And again, if we look back at the history here, that decoupling wouldn't have really happened until you got Bitcoin dominance up here. So although this is slightly different to this exact moment, moving back up, it's actually more in line with this moment where we actually pull Bitcoin's dominance back down before eventually it goes back up. So my expectations are still here that we would see Bitcoin dominance increasing up towards that 51% area and maybe even slightly higher. It won't be exactly the same because there are ultimately more cryptocurrencies. There is a different amount of money in this space. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a like for like exactly, but your pattern should forming here where Bitcoin dominance should increase before you get that decoupling and altcoins absolutely go parabolic, bringing Bitcoin's dominance right the way down towards 30%. That is still my expectation. It won't be exactly the same. So the pattern will change ever so slightly, but the expectations are still that Bitcoin dominance will increase before dropping down towards 30%. Okay, and obviously we can take a look at the Bitcoin here, stock to flow model. Again, always important to understand where Bitcoin is within its own cycle, because obviously with those altcoins really tracking alongside Bitcoin, it's always important to understand. Now, here we have this stock to flow model. We can obviously see the most recent correction here when it comes to Bitcoin, which is quite a steep one. At least it looks like it's really steep on the kind of trading charts. When we look at it from a stock to flow model, we can see what's happened previously, and then we look at what's happening right now, and we say actually this isn't anything too much to concern ourselves with, because history does tell us that we are going to spike above this line come the end of the bull run. And so far we haven't had a bull run that's ended halfway through like this, and this would be something completely new. It is of course possible, but it's very unlikely. Usually speaking, history tends to repeat itself. So right now we obviously have this 2013 example where we have that quite a severe kind of correction when it comes to Bitcoin. And obviously we can see this being a relatively severe correction for Bitcoin at the moment. Now, obviously this does go up and spike up yet again before actually entering in that bear market. So right now, what are our expectations? Well, my expectations are that eventually this will actually spike up here above our blue line as we peak this bull run. And again, if we look at the 2017-2018 bull run, we can see a very similar correction just here in July. And this one was obviously also July. So the thing that you've got to bear in mind is this one was really severe. This one was not as severe, and this one is somewhere in between the two. So again, they're not like for like. None of these bull runs are identical. The patterns are relatively similar. The severity may be slightly different. Pricing is obviously very different. But ultimately what you end up with is a spike above this line after this correction has happened. So my expectations are still here that Bitcoin is yet to go on to set another all-time high, most likely one more, maybe two more in the case of 2017, where you have one correction here, it goes on to set up another all-time high, but another pullback, and then sets its final kind of motion to the upside. With 2017, it was actually just one more spike above that line. So again, looking at where we are in this particular cycle, Everything is still here to play for. Ultimately, we are still looking at spiking above this line, which does put Bitcoin above $100,000. Whether there is one more all-time high or two more all-time highs, we do not know this yet, not until we get a little bit further down the line. Our expectations are that it should kind of come to a bit of a close towards the end of the year, so we'll have to see how that one plays out. But my point with this particular piece of chart here and this analysis is to basically indicate that we're about partway through this bull run and we haven't actually peaked just yet. And then, of course, this then takes us on to taking a look at the Cardano chart specifically. Okay, so we obviously now know there's a lot of fear in the market space. Ultimately, as a general kind of crypto space, there's lots of fear. We obviously had a look at the 𝗖𝗢 dashboard, and we can see that there is also extreme fear for Cardano. We also know that Bitcoin's dominance has actually started to decrease, and we need that thing to increase really in order to really get moving with everything that needs to happen here. And obviously, when we take a look at the stock to flow, it's quite clear to say that we're partway through the bull run and not all the way there. So ultimately, we are still in this kind of corrective state of what I believe to be a fourth wave. So what I'm going to do is just zoom on out, pull this down, and show you that bigger view that we were talking about earlier. Now, if I just bring this down, we can obviously see where we are in the current cycle, where we have been previously, and where we are likely to go. So again, starting from March of 2020, when we had that low point, going into this bull market, we can obviously see wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and then wave 5 going up there towards $10. Now, ultimately, what we do have here is wave 2 being the kind of standard correction of wave 1. And we see wave 4 here potentially a little bit short for Cardano against the correction of wave 3. So there is still potential that this could drop a little bit lower. I don't think it's going to drop too much further if it has to. And it may not even drop at all. But ultimately, generally speaking, it's a 40% move for wave 4 against wave 3. So 40% of wave 3 should be your correction of wave 4. So there's a possibility of pulling this thing down a little bit lower, maybe towards that kind of dollar level. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen unless Bitcoin absolutely does pull back as well. But if it does, then ultimately we can start to see this thing potentially drop down a little bit further, completing wave 4. Otherwise, we have already corrected to the lowest possible point, and we should start to see things really kickstart into wave 5. Wave 5 obviously takes us up towards that $10 range. In fact, this is actually somewhere between the $7.20 and the $10 range. Okay, so the Fibonacci extension levels are showing us about $7.20, but this only shows us what is currently out there in terms of in the ecosystem. This chart and the technical data can only ever show us what has already happened. It does not have visionary or does not have the ability to look into what is going to be happening with Cardano in terms of smart contract functionality or any of that kind of stuff. So ultimately what you end up with is some fundamentals that are going to potentially outperform the technical data here. So when it comes to looking at an extension level of $7.20 based on the current performance of Cardano, it takes into consideration none of those smart contracts, none of those DApps being built, etc. So what's going to happen most likely is that we'll actually surpass that $7.20 and go up towards at least $10. And again, from here, everything is there to play for. We could potentially see $15 or even $20 Cardano in the future here in this particular bull run. And again, this comes down to many different factors. There's lots of things that drive price discovery. Obviously, it's supply and demand ultimately as what is going to be the trigger to increasing the price of ADA. So the circulating supply really isn't taken into consideration too much. It only really comes into play when we start thinking about how much supply is actually up for sale at any one point in time. That's what really helps push that price as that demand comes in. So with the fact that there is such a huge amount actually delegated and technically speaking out of circulation, that does actually help with the price discovery. So again, as Chris mentioned at the beginning of this video, delegating is absolutely key. It helps not only the ecosystem from a decentralization point of view, it also provides you with a passive income because you're earning a nice return on your investment, but it also helps and aids with price discovery because you're not technically actually having your ADA up for sale. So by withholding that ADA from the market, you are absolutely providing the right kind of catalyst for price discovery. Now, let's get into what's been happening recently. Now we have a bit of an understanding as to where things are from that macro view. Now, right here, we do obviously have this downward trend forming, right? So we have this parallel channel. We can see this has actually started to form here. It's still quite weak, so we'll have to see how this kind of plays out. There's ultimately only one touch point at the top here with 2 touch points at the bottom. Now, ultimately, again, we want to be paying attention as to whether or not there's an upward trend line kind of forming here as well. So I'm just going to quickly draw this on and see how that plays out. So ultimately, what you end up with is a downward trend line kind of forming between here and here. And then obviously these things are intersecting around the 19th. So midway through June, we have this kind of intersection here happening. Now, obviously, this parallel channel I don't think is actually going to be around for too long. I think that's likely to come to a bit of an end. And then obviously from there, we'll have a breakout event, in my opinion. So again, we're going to be looking and seeing how this kind of outperforms the performance of ADA in the next couple of days, and make sure that everything is kind of being ticked across as needed. Now, in terms of what we can see here, we obviously have that 50, 100, and 200 moving average. Obviously, again, this is just a daily chart. If we go ahead and pull this into our hourly view, here we can see a little bit more of that clarity. We actually see that we are below the 50, 100, and 200 moving averages. And we can see how we had the cross here between the 50 and the 100, and that delay here, but Bitcoin really pulling the price down towards this lower band here. But again, nothing has fundamentally changed outside of our expectations. We obviously still have our resistance line up at $1.83. We have a lower area of support down here. And ultimately, we are quite a way away from that actually kind of, being a bit of a problem. So right now, we're looking at this parallel channel. We're waiting for this thing to be invalidated. And obviously, we have the upward trend and the downward trend. We're looking to see if those things also start to come into play. But for Cardano, that longer term picture is absolutely key. For me personally, I can see that Cardano is going to be doing some fantastic things in the future and has such huge prospects that these particular kind of dips, generally speaking, do not bother me. I have a pretty good understanding as to how the fear and greed indexes are telling us that a lot of people, and particularly retail investors, are quite fearful, and therefore, unfortunately, the price is going to be volatile. And this is an opportunity for those who are able to take advantage of it. We obviously have Bitcoin's dominance indicating to us that actually Bitcoin dominance is dropping, which actually should be increasing. So we're looking to get an increase on that shortly. And obviously Bitcoin's stock to flow model does show us that we're partway through the bull run. You couple all of those with the fact that we have a bigger macro picture here for Cardano, and we can obviously see what our expectations are for this thing potentially moving up towards that $7.20 to $10 on the minimum kind of side of things, puts me in a pretty confident position here with Cardano's ADA. But Chris, is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about for Cardano?
Just that, the prices being where they are today doesn't change how bullish I am on this project. I feel that there's so much more that's just around the corner. I don't think we're even that far away from some very healthy price discovery. So for me, these dips are opportunities, and I'm going to be taking them.
Fantastic. So guys, if you found this useful and informative, do go ahead and hit that like button for us. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with the technical analysis, the new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, and the news, then why not go ahead and subscribe? By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed, so why not? Right, with that said, done and out of the way, we hope you have a fantastic day, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, take care.